Sear, our non-stimulant, thermogenic, and recomposition agent. Sear is a super cool product because it's going to help you utilize turning your white adipose tissue, which is for storage of fat, into brown adipose tissue, which is going to help with energy production. So this is great to use for a competition prep or in your weight loss phase. So you can stack it with a stimulant-based thermogenic, or you could also use it in your off-season or muscle building phase to help keep you lean and mean. Sear.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Pro Physique Code. So Stephen Bogren here, obviously. Jessica Best here. Hi.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were going to go right to our other guest.
and our esteemed guest today, Mrs. Danica Johnson.
Hello. I
you
feel
a
like I'm becoming a reoccurring guest. I kind of like it.
I'm
I
just
like
wearing a hat so that for unity. You know what I mean? Because you're wearing a hat, so I was like, I'll wear a hat too.
I appreciate that because if I'm being very honest, I didn't have enough time between gym and now to do anything with this. So a hat it is. I'm okay with hats. I like hats.
Is that hat for Alabama? This just says AL and it has a picture of a mountain, but I don't think Alabama has mountains. Do they?
No. So
I don't
this
think I've
hat
been.
is a very special hat for a very it's for a special SWAT team.
Oh, okay. All
It
right.
represents the I think it represents the Adirondacks, like the 3 Adirondack ranges within the spot that the SWAT team operates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
For those of you who don't know, SWAT teams help to control bug populations. They just go out and they just swat them all out of existence.
Right. Nothing
exactly
too intense, actually. Really nothing too intense.
Wow. See, so I didn't start off with I didn't immediately start off with something random and weird today, at least.
No.
I'm back to
No.
my the meds that I feel like work really well for me instead of the ones that wear off halfway through the day. Prime. So now once I can eat again, we're gonna be really. By the way, all right, what did I miss with you guys talking trash the other week about my stomach and me having surgery? Because apparently somebody said that they were talking about it on here, and I don't know how much I trust y'all. Danica, I think you're probably safe on this one, but
Yeah, I wasn't on there.
yeah,
I wasn't on the podcast last week.
you're both safe. Okay, you're both safe. So, but yes, I had surgery. No, oh, here, I'll show. So for everybody that watches the YouTube, see 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I wiggled my little white belly at them. For those of you only listening, 5 incisions. So they go in, they wrap my little tum-tum around itself to reinforce that esophagus. So now I don't have any more acid coming back up.
Ugh. But it's your recovery is a little rough.
So overall, nowhere near as bad as the ACL. But so yesterday and the day before, I think I was having a lot more inflammation around that. So I really wasn't able to eat or drink anything for most of the day. So not being able to eat or drink is kind of, I think I'm down almost 10 pounds in 2 weeks.
I can see in your face.
Yeah, it's sad. I wish that I hadn't lost my face body fat and I had lost my little low back body fat. I was like, oh, that would have been so much better, but whatever. As long as I keep my shirt on, I guess it's fine. So I'm still on liquid diet right now. I can do things so I've been able to eat mashed potatoes and stuff. You just have to make sure it's very, very, I don't know, almost watery and very small bites. And I have to take a long time because apparently you have to relearn how to swallow and eat.
Wow.
So because I always want to breathe right after I swallow. So then you swallow air. That's bad. But the other thing is when I swallow, I will feel it go down. And oftentimes you can feel it sitting at the bottom of your esophagus. And there will be a delay before it goes Wah! And then you can feel it go into your stomach. So if I drink something that's hot or cold, if I have ice water stuff, I can feel the cold at the bottom of my esophagus waiting to go in until it relaxes enough and actually goes into my stomach. And then like if I do it too much, like the other days, so either foods I'm not ready for or eating too fast or too big of a bite, whatever, you feel it get stuck in your throat. And then what will happen is like I say quote unquote throw up, but you're not throwing up anything in your stomach. It's just everything that was sitting in your esophagus comes back up.
Yeah, like regurgitates.
Yeah. Regurgitation. So
That's,
Well,
it's been interesting thus
you're
far.
very in tune with your body.
I like to think that I'm pretty in tune with most of the craziness that goes on in my body and my mind.
Well, yeah, to be able to make that connection and visualize what's happening and then feel it. I don't think that a lot of people actually feel that, or it probably happens to many people, but they don't necessarily have that intrinsic point of view.
I think bodybuilding has helped because
Yeah.
like when you've done what we've done for so long, like, and for better or worse, you're paying a lot of attention to your body and what's going on. And so if you've been doing this for a decade plus, God, you kind of have an idea of how things feel. I think if anything, for most of us, the problem that I see or that I have, because weight training, it makes you less sensitive to pain, right? So it gives you a higher pain tolerance. I don't feel pain the same way in specific things as a lot of people. So when they were like, well, do you have heartburn? I was like, I don't think I've ever had heartburn. Like, well, you have Barrett's esophagus. So obviously you've been, having acid come up into your throat for probably years at this point to a pretty decent degree. I was like, oh, interesting stuff.
yeah.
You
I
know,
mean, awareness is so important, I think, in general. And that kind of like platforms into like what we're going to talk about today.
I was just going to try and stay off topic all day long.
But I mean, like we've been doing this for, I don't know, like a decade or more, or like a long time. And I think a lot of that has allowed us, like Steven said, like for better or for worse, a lot of awareness surrounding our bodies, how it functions, what's going on. And a lot of people just don't have that general awareness. I find a lot of my coaching is bringing that awareness to surface, or like asking my clients questions to help with their awareness. I guess I should say what the hell our topic is.
Boo. Just let them guess.
I was like, as I just like go into whatever I'm talking
So here's
about.
the funny thing to me is that I did this interview last week with Adam and Dr. Kelly Strohacker, who is the person who is overseeing his PhD at university. And I thought it was, I don't know. I thought it was phenomenal. It was probably, it might be my favorite podcast I've ever done. So that's saying a lot. I loved it, but neither of you guys have heard that podcast yet, and neither of you guys know what we talked about. So you guys are walking in blind. Ha, 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 ha.
That's okay. I'm down for it.
But we're kind of following up on all of our listeners. If you've listened to last week's, you'll know, or 2 weeks ago, however we do this, you'll know kind of what we're talking about. But they do a lot of research in the exercise adherence. The word they use in research a lot of time is affect, or how it makes you feel. Do you feel good about it? Do you feel bad about it? How are your feelings? And using that in a way to positively influence exercise adherence. Woof.
That's heavy and amazing.
Yes.
All at the same time.
So today we're talking about kind of maybe some of the, and this is why Danica is that's just one more reason why Danica is perfect. Let's be real. Okay.
I'm far from.
What is wrong with me today? I'm like, this morning, I was like, I am feeling feelings. I am being nice to people. Jessica, you look so
Yeah, but
happy today.
compliment? What is happening?
I don't know
Maybe
what's
it's
going
surgery.
on.
Maybe they did something to your ticker.
Yeah, they gave me a lobotomy while I was out, probably. They had a Coba spit out our energy drink. So, so today we're talking about how we as coaches help people to embrace that behavior change, to uptake that, to upkeep it, or, and I think this one is probably one that they didn't list, or she didn't list in her idea that Christina sent us, but also how we prepare people to even be ready to start undertaking behavior change. Because I do think that's a pretty big part of it. A lot of the like models and theories have that as parts of them. But for a lot of people, I think we just feel oftentimes like we can do behavior change, we can do habit change, we can do this, we can do that. If there's a will, there's a way. But I think at the heart of it, a lot of us, like we might not be ready for that step yet. We might need to be like preparing ourselves mentally or lifestyle wise to even get ready to start making those little baby steps in the right direction. So like our behavior change is maybe education. It's maybe talking to somebody and working around some feelings that we have around things. It's like different things. And now I'll hush and let you guys
Yeah.
take over because I keep going.
I think that a big, when I got this topic, I was like, well, this is, a big question that I ask people is, it sounds like you want change, but do you want to change?
Right.
Because there's a huge difference. And that makes them realize like, oh yeah. Like most of us want change in some capacity or another, but the next step is actually wanting to change, like implementing shifts and habit changes and becoming more aware of those things that are potentially keeping us stuck so that we can't get to the change that we want, because it doesn't happen just because we think it's not that easy. And to be able to kind of dive into that, it's amazing when clients are like, yeah, I'm ready to change. Like there are so many things that are keeping me stuck that I'm ready to change. But without asking that question, and for people to just say like, yeah, I want this change and I want this change. And I'm like, okay, that's great that you're ready to like dream. Are you ready to do? Are you ready to put in the work too?
Yeah, I mean, I like that you bring that up because sometimes people will hire a coach and just expect that there is going to be change that occurs. And a lot of times when I'm starting with a client, it's just seeing where they're at and just trying to understand where they're at. And asking them questions about different things and about where they're at. And that in itself is change. And that can be scary because, again, a lot of times when people hire a coach, I find that they have this idea that they need to impress us, or they want to.
They do.
I mean, yes, I get that. But also it's like, oh no, I can be perfect. Or like, if I'm not perfect, I'm just not going to show up. Or they tell us what they think that we want to hear, without actually getting down to what is really going on. And so like, there are those stages of change of, like pre-contemplation, which is like, you're not even thinking about it. Contemplation, which is maybe that, like, that might be like the dreaming. Like I want change.
I think that's where a lot of like these people that we talk to are, because it's obviously if you're in pre-contemplation, you're not even talking to us. You're not listening to us. You're not in our
You're not
world.
listening.
Yeah.
You're over there eating whatever the fuck you want and
Must be nice.
having a grand old time. But yeah, we're mostly probably talking to the contemplation, or like the preparation or the action. And I find like people will go in between the preparation and then the action. So preparation is like that stage where you're getting ready. So if you are starting on a health and fitness journey, you're like purchasing a gym membership, or you're joining different support groups. You are starting maybe to track your food, maybe.
Or even like you're looking at gyms, right?
Yeah.
You're looking at like, so I think credit where credit's due. Your preparation phase can literally be you educating yourself. Maybe you're like figuring out how to learn and do nutrition levels. I would honestly put the action piece, depending on the person, as joining the gym, and
Mhm.
like actually stepping foot in there. You're doing something actionable at that point. So like, even if you're just like, oh, well, they're kind of entertaining and I listen to them, like that could be part of your preparation phase because you're preparing yourself with more information, experience, perspective for what is to come next.
Yeah, I agree. There's other questions I always ask too are, well, I'm sure you guys ask this too, but why now? Like, why hasn't this happened in the past? Why haven't you already achieved this? Like, what has held you back in the past? Or is this like a new idea that you've come up with? And what has kind of sparked that motivation? Because that's something that we can like feed into and lean into a little bit more, like whatever sparked the interest, motivated them, encouraged them, got them on the phone. That thing is what sparked the fire. So can we kind of talk about that a little bit? And then if they have, I always explore in the past, like where have you been able to make changes in the past and what helped you to make those like adjustments or changes or transitions or whatever that may be, because I need to know how you operate too with change can be scary for some people, and for most people I would say the fear of the unknown, or like how long is this going to take, how much of a commitment is this, like not knowing can be very scary, and our bodies they're formed to go away from pain. Like whatever is a perceived threat, our bodies are like, no, we like to be comforted. Like our mind will kind of bring us back to comfort. So having that saying, well, if I'm afraid, I have been afraid of change in the past, but I was able to overcome it because it was exciting. So then we can attach excitement to change and say, yeah, if you get a little nervous, that is also excitement, like excitement for what's to come, as opposed to, oh, I'm feeling nervous, I'm scared, this is a threat, I shouldn't do this. So continuation of it.
Question for you guys, because I think my experience is maybe a little bit different. Do you feel that more people are afraid of the change, or that more people have challenges with the uncomfortable nature of change? Because I think my experience is most people, it's not that they're afraid of the change. They tend to be excited. They tend to look at a lot of the positives. And again, just the people that I've experienced throughout my time doing this. The ones that I think where people struggle the most, I think, is, and it reminds me of like people, like as you're growing up, your trauma responses of dealing with things, right? Like, okay, cool. And like, maybe it worked back then, but now you snap at your wife because you have this trauma response anytime this thing happens, and now it's exactly what's holding you back. But that's like because you're comfortable with that response, or you've trained yourself with that response. I feel like it's that discomfort of change and people seeking that normality, what they're comfortable with, what they're used to. I feel like that's the big kicker that I see for people as they're initiating habit change.
I would agree. I don't feel like there is a lot of fear, as there is like not knowing how to work through discomfort. Or yeah, reverting back to the easy way when something that is uncomfortable comes up.
But it's not
So,
even necessarily the easy way. Like sometimes
right.
what we're used to doing is way harder.
That's what I mean. Sorry.
Yeah.
Your old behaviors,
Yeah.
or like things that are comfortable for you behavioral wise, but aren't actually easy. Yes.
Or
That's
even sometimes that comfortable.
yeah. Right. It's like new. It is discomfort. And I actually talk to my clients a lot about discomfort and like letting them know that this is uncomfortable, or like if you feel discomfort, that's okay. It's part of change. Change, like discomfort inspires change. If we were comfortable all the time, then there would never be any change. We would just be humming along. But it's within that discomfort that grows change and grows grit, grows whatever it is. So I always talk about feeling the discomfort and bringing awareness to that, and then asking like, where is this discomfort coming from? Because a lot of times it could be like if somebody's training in the gym and they'll never want to pick up a heavier weight, it might be because they've hurt themselves in the past, or they've seen other people hurt themselves, or they've seen on social media people hurt themselves, or they just have like this, you know, discomfort there, and it, or pain tolerance or whatever it is. So I think it's being open to discomfort, not in a way that like is going to be damaging to your health or anything like that. Obviously, we're good coaches. We wouldn't be like, oh, go and die. It's fine. But being open to discomfort, and understand like discomfort might be like picking up, going into a gym. First of all, that might be uncomfortable for some people. It might be tracking food because of certain food fears or past food experiences. And it could also be for some people in actually needing to rest. Like for me, that was my discomfort in resting and understanding what rest was, right? So like there are lots of kind of discomforts that come out of a health and fitness change. It's not always just physical.
So like,
Yeah.
do you, because I don't want to, it's like, do you think that like, I feel like my communication was different, or the way I perceived what you were saying was maybe different. Is that kind of what you meant by like people are afraid of it, Danica, or was it like they actually fear doing something else?
Well, again, you guys have to remember who I work with. So like with the
Right.
mindset clients, I think it's a little bit different because I am, when they do come to me, there is a lot of fear-based things that like I'll give an example. One of them, weight gain was a protective thing for her. And so to lose that weight means that she is letting go of that protective shield that she held on to for good, not good reason, but for reason in the past. And like, that's very fearful for her. Or if somebody is really wanting to be doing intuitive eating, but like their upbringing was like, you have to be on Weight Watchers and you have to do this and you have to be that weight. And like, it was constantly given her fear is that I'm going to completely fall off. And I don't know if I can let go of this part of me that I have. I'm fearful that it's going to be a hot mess express if I do. There is a lot of fear that comes. And with that, I think with fear too, and that is the word that I have heard people say to me. So like, I don't want to dismiss that as if they're not feeling that. Like when they tell me I'm fearful, I'm not going to be like, that's not fear. Like I truly believe that that's what they're feeling. And to speak on what you guys have said, perhaps another way that they can frame it too is that there is discomfort within this change because I'm uncomfortable of like the unknown, or I'm uncomfortable letting go of my past identities or parts of me or beliefs. I'm uncomfortable with letting those go because I have held on to them for so long that they've become who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I wanted to circle back to that before we got too far away, because I wanted to make sure that like my experience or how I was trying to relay my understanding of it was either correct, or that you had the opportunity to correct me so I wasn't misunderstanding or interpreting.
I think it's awesome to be able to hear the majority of what you both as coaches experience, and then that there's other people that do have these feelings too. And that's all with, I think that like, that's part of, you know, being able to adhere to a fitness program, and it's the difficulty level or the rate of change is so different for each individual, depending on what they're working with and what their past was and what are their old beliefs. Like, I think that there's just such a big spectrum. So it's good for people to hear, like, you could be with what Jess is talking about, what Stephen is talking about, what I am talking about. Like, you can be in all of these places, and you're probably not alone in what you're experiencing.
Yeah. And I almost sometimes have to wonder if like the same fears of, because I think for me, a lot of what got, and I know a lot of other people, what gets them into the bodybuilding thing is they feel like if they're big and strong, they're less vulnerable, right? So I know, like, for me, one of the reasons I wanted to get into bodybuilding was because I wanted to feel more secure in some way, shape, or form. And so it wasn't the fear of bodybuilding per se, or the fear of getting into the gym or being active. It is more so this inherent fear of, well, what if I am making myself vulnerable by not doing this? And so it was a different fear that like pushed me into this to some degree initially, where I was like, was that fear as valid as I felt it was in that time? Um, but that same fear probably wasn't necessarily benefiting me in a lot of ways.
Right.
Because if it kept me from doing things that were good for me, or like that was a huge issue for me, not in terms of like health and fitness goals, but relationship things, learning how to be vulnerable, learning how to be open. And so even though that same like protective action thought way that I approach situations, it was beneficial for me in some ways, it wasn't beneficial for me in other ways. And I think like trying to get down to that self-awareness of saying, okay, how is this feeling benefiting me? How is this feeling hurting me? What is it keeping me from that I want? And then saying, okay, well, now how do I manage that feeling differently in different cases, or change my perception of these things to where that feeling of fear is not keeping me from these things that I say I want as part of my life, my identity, and the things that follow through with that.
Yeah, I think I love how you worded that. Fear is also mostly attached, or a lot of the times attached with anxieties, which can be attached with discomfort. So diving deeper into it and just recognizing that that feeling doesn't serve us well. Mostly fear kind of stands in the way of a lot of opportunity. And when we're able to kind of say, like, this could also just mean when I'm having that like anxious feeling, maybe this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, maybe this is like that feeling of excitement to merge with anxiousness, right? Because at the end of the day, if you say to yourself, well, I usually say to my clients, well, walk me through that fear and let's see if it's valid. Like, you're afraid of losing weight, but you're no longer in the same state that you were in. Like, that was 20 years ago that you were there. So you're a different person. You're on your own. So we don't need to carry that weight anymore, right? Because it doesn't serve us well. In order for you to, the changes that you're afraid of or anxious about are moving your body, eating a little bit better, getting better sleep. Like, so walk me through those things and what negative effects will you have from doing that? Like going through all of the, well, this will be hard, or this will be challenging, or I don't know if I can do that. Well, walk me through all of what you're feeling, and will you benefit from it or not? Because if you won't, then like we won't do it, right? But like chances are all the things that we're just nervous about are probably things that we need to challenge ourselves with a little bit more, to see like this is an opportunity for growth, like Jess said. Like, this is an opportunity to really expand and like have an extension of my life that's a deeper meaning or health, right? Like a better life in general.
Yeah, a lot of times, like the fears or anxieties or thoughts that I know my clients have and have shared with me, but also that I have like within me, and like some of the stuff I'm working through, they're thoughts. They're not always reality.
Mhm.
Actually, a lot of times they're not reality, honestly. And it's super easy to just get caught up in those thoughts. I find a lot of times those thoughts are a lot about things outside of our control. And so, or relatively within it, if you start working backwards from what it is. So for example, like I have a client right now, she's like 7 weeks post show, and she's terrified of quote unquote blowing up like her last post show. But we're 7-8 weeks post show now, and she hasn't, and she's been super on plan. And she had this like thing click in her brain and go, wait, like those things that I was scared of about me going off my plan, like that's I'm able to control that because it's me and I'm making these choices now. And these fears that I have, like I'm already at 8 weeks post show. She's like, why am I having these things? And so it's sometimes, yeah, it's like maybe things that we can control, but if we work backwards, it's not realistic. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I was gonna ask, like, so do you mind if I share a little bit of my perspective from you from years ago on this kind of thing?
Please.
I think for a lot of people, that fear comes down to control. And like, I was talking to somebody the other day. I was like, we can control a lot of the process stuff. But I feel like where a lot of individuals' fear comes from is controlling outcomes. And for you, for a long time, and you could speak to the truth of this, whether that's still the case or not. During my time working with you, you very much were one of those people who liked and felt, I feel like, the need to be in control to some degree. Like you had to feel like you were in control of where you were going. And I think that that is a scary thing for a lot of people, because the truth of the matter is no matter how much quote unquote control you put into something, there are plenty of times where we're not in control of the outcome. Like we influence the outcome, hopefully, with that. But like, I feel like that is a big one. And I think something that actually drives a lot of people to fitness is because it gives them a lot of control. I get to control what meals I eat. I get to control my meal time. I get to control what time I go to the gym. I get to, and because it creates so much of this structure. And that's why I said at first, either good and bad, like there are some individuals that use this as a measure of feeling very in control of your life, which is a good thing to feel, but it might not necessarily be within, I don't know, maybe what is a healthy bounds for everyone.
I think where a lot of my control was focused on was exactly what you said, was like the outcome rather than the process of like, what am I doing right now? And like, how am I handling that right now? And a lot of times I wasn't handling things very well in the moment because I wasn't present. I didn't have the like presence awareness of where I was. I was so focused on the outcome of my reverse or my physique or body fat gain or prep and blah, blah, blah. I wasn't able to be in the moment where I was and reflect and be like, well, what am I doing right now? Like, what am I doing today? And like, am I doing what I quote unquote should be doing today to help me? And if I am, then cool. But a lot of times I was, but I was like white knuckling it. Instead of just being like, cool, I'm great. Like I gave everything that I could today and I'm present and I'm being aware of like, you know, how I'm executing on shit. And that's all that I could do. Like that. And so I've definitely changed. I still love control. I love control. Love it. But I'm much more focused on the now and the present, and like feeling how I feel and bringing awareness to myself now, like today. And that will result in an outcome that I want. But if I just like shit on what I'm doing right now, the outcome is going to be also shit.
And I would say like it positively influences your outcome.
Yeah.
Because we can say everybody has different motives, goals, whatever. But one of the ones that's I see oftentimes is like the pro card. It will positively benefit the outcome of that. But at the same time, even if you do everything right, it might not change whether or not it happens.
Yeah.
And like that is like the hard part about the physique related goals, and that can range. Like I've had people that tell me they want to look like this other person online that they look up to and they think this has this great physique. I'm like, look, we can make progress, but this person is not you. So it might be a better thing for us to look at as how do we make the process enjoyable? How do we figure out the things that you like and that make you feel alive? And how do we just make you feel like you're the best version of you? It's like, because Adam made a post that like talks about like 5 big evidence-based things there. And I touched on one of them already in terms of like the resource adaptability and our ability to change things about ourselves, right? Like that's a lot of work. I constantly still years after the fact of fixing some of my problems have to be mindful that I don't revert back, right? It's like Alcoholics Anonymous. They have people that are, they have a 1-year coin, a 2-year, a 3. Like it's still work after the fact. But like that motives, right? And the research, I think, is pretty clear that the people who tend to do the best are not the ones that are always chasing the next carrot on the stick, but the ones who are finding ways to enjoy what they're doing, and the fact that they're making progress. And I know Danica has something here, so before she forgets it.
I have so many thoughts.
I know we just talked a lot, and I feel like Danica was like, "Oh God, oh."
Welcome to every sentence with me, Danica.
First, if it's getting really dark here, it's because it's gonna thunderstorm. So
it looks really ominous wherever you are.
yeah, like it's about to pour. So
Danica's in the dark. Make sure you watch on YouTube.
I wasn't expecting this. I might need to put a light on. I'm gonna put a light on. But I was thinking too, so a couple of things with being okay with not knowing exactly what the outcome is going to be. So having a good idea of like what you want the outcome to be, and then discussing like what are my fears potentially, or what am I like uncomfortable with that outcome, and then working backwards. So you kind of touched on this, but if someone says to me like Jess, your client, of like, well, what if I blow up? I'm like, okay, what are variables that are contributing to that happening? And then saying, are you in control of those variables? Do you have access to those variables? Let's talk about those things. And typically they do, right? Like, so then I'll say, all right. And then on a day-to-day basis, like today, do you have control over those variables today? Great. Let's start with today, because we don't have to be fearful of like something that could potentially happen way down the road. Like that, essentially, you will not be in control. That is driving you. And that's the thing that's controlling you, is that like thing that you're fearful of. And oh my gosh, like, what if this happens? What if this happens? Like that's kind of in your driver's seat, and you need to be able to kind of get back into your driver's seat and say like, actually, I'm the one that's driving this vehicle. So that was one thing that I wanted to mention. And then that letting go, I think, is really important. So I don't know how many times it's like we beat this up with trust the process, but like letting go of some things is really important to allow more space and ability to actually be present. When we are stuck on like certain things and we're not letting go of past beliefs or habits or the fear of the unknown, that takes up space inside. Like it takes up a lot of space and it's not paying rent. And we need to kind of get it out so that you actually do have the ability to be more present with the variables that you are in control of, and also exploring the uncontrollables. There are some things that you're not going to be able to control. And can you be okay with that? And go there with your clients, go there with yourself and saying like, this may be out of my control. And that's okay, because everything that like I can organize and I do have in control, these are great things that I can lean into a little bit more.
I feel like people forget that our lives, the world, the universe is just like one giant ball of chaos at all times. And it's just like how much of that you see or you don't. And so like if we don't see like the absolute random chaos that occurs at all times, we're like, wow, we really have it together as human beings. But like the more that you see that, you're like, oh yeah, yep, nope, this is just silliness half the time.
Yeah. They're just a beautiful chaos, organized chaos that we can live in.
Sometimes it's organized, not all.
Sometimes.
You're like,
Sometimes it's not.
look, I really like lines, okay? Just can we go in a line?
Well, but part of that, so because I'm half like looking at Adam's post that we're supposed to be talking about, which is behavior change.
We kind of are.
We kind of are, which
I feel like we're talking a
feel
lot
like
about like how you get into the idea of
we
being even ready to get there. Maybe we
absolutely.
need to do a whole series on this.
Ooh,
I
I
love
feel
it.
like we dove like right down into the like uncomfortable
stuff.
like fear situation instead of like this is what you do. Like we just like we just sent it. But one of the things that you're like Stephen with the like world of chaos, one of the things that Adam's post talked about was resource adaptability and being adaptable in your methods. So like, yeah, we want to have okay methods. We should have some structure, routine, blah, blah, blah. But how many times have our clients gone, oh my God, my routine was crazy this week. I did nothing because of my routine. Because I didn't have
It will continue until I die.
right.
Or retire somehow. I don't think
And
that's
the thing, exactly. And it's like, okay, well, the month of July, I traveled every single weekend. Every single weekend, I was not at home. I was on multiple flights. I got delayed multiple times. I'm in fucking prep. That shit, I kept my shit together. I almost cried on Sunday, but it's fine.
right.
I didn't cry.
And let's take a moment to like recognize and understand if that's not you who's listening, like that's okay. Jessica's resources, her habits, her lifestyle, her identity are all things that set her up to be able to deal with those things to maybe a different degree or level. So if you are hearing that and you're like, well, why can't I do it? You might not have the same resource availability in your schedule. And so like if you feel that when you travel or the kids are going crazy or XYZ is happening or you're moving and you don't have the resources, like you have to understand that that is okay. Just because you're not where she's at in terms of her ability to manage that the way that she desires doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you or that you're even in a bad place. You might be making hella progress even if you still struggle with those things or those things are huge roadblocks for you.
Yeah. I mean, like I was able and I was able to navigate a lot of these things because of my just ability to rely on people who support me. I asked for help multiple times. And so like I have a tool belt of resources that I've built up like for 7 years. Like I started competing in 2018 was my first year competing, but like before then, I did athletics. I did personal training. Like I coached athletes. So I was already building and developing a lot of these resources because it was just like part of what I did, part of how I grew up and like part of my job. But it's kind of like if I didn't have those, things would have not gone really well whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so it's all about having these experiences in your life. If you have health and fitness goals, hopefully going in with a plan or like formulating a plan, a coach helps you with that and going, okay, is my plan realistic? Coming up with something and then trying it. And then like, does it work? And like, did it work? How did it work? Like, what didn't work? What did work? And then looking at and pulling from those experiences and how you responded and then like learning from it. Right. So like you cannot just magically pull shit out of your ass when your flight gets delayed for 7 hours.
Bet.
Like done. I knew I just had this feeling. I was like, what if my flight gets delayed? What if this? What if that? I had food in my bag. I also had gummies. Hallelujah. Took some of that shit, got my food in, and it's fine. And whatever. Like I knew the anxiety also was building in my body. So I went and I laid down somewhere and I put on my headphones and I relaxed. Like I had felt that. And it's from me bringing awareness in past experiences of how my body feels physically when it's stressed, preparing myself with food just in case, right? Because I've been there. So it's kind of like, you got to try something and then learn from it and then move forward with that information.
Yeah. I think being able to ask yourself too, have I been able to like adapt, pivot, change in the past before? And it doesn't have to be health and fitness related. It could be with anything. Like
it could be with your kids.
Yeah, like your work schedule doesn't go well. And also, like you said, like asking for help or being able to say, like, how did you do this? Or I love when my clients are like, hey, kids are at a lacrosse tournament and it's an 8-hour day, not sure what to do. Yeah, reach out to me and let me know, because my job is to build your little toolkit, like your fanny pack of tools that you can have on you at all times, so that like if shit hits the fan, you can't come back to me being like, well, everything wasn't perfect, so I said fuck it. Like I said, I don't want to partake in it anymore because I'm not at home. I don't have my own gym. I can't access my own stove. Like, I don't know. We're learning how you can still achieve these goals, continue to like encourage healthy thought ways, healthy patterns of thinking, healthy habit changing, like despite anything that happens. Like, could you imagine if I was like, hey guys, it's gonna storm, so I'm out. Like, no, you don't just call yourself quits just because. And also go there. Like you just said, go there, experience things so that you can have takeaways. Like maybe it doesn't go as smooth. I've had many clients say, I think I'm ready to go for a vacation. Everything's great. And then they come back and they're like, that wasn't what I expected. Like I didn't really do that great. Great. Awesome. What are your takeaways then? Like, what can we do better next time? And how can we better be prepared if it happens down the road again?
I think that's the hard part for most, because I think inherently we have this expectation where if we see somebody else doing something, managing something, I expect that I should be able to do that to some degree as well, or I should probably be close, right? Granted, I probably have a decent amount of self-confidence in most things, but it would not be fair for me to have the expectation that I can do what an astrophysicist can do just walking in, right? It would not. So, and I think this is one of the troubles with social media that gets a lot of people off kilter with like the habit change formation stuff, is you're going into, a convention expecting to be like the cream of the crop astrophysicist. And it's like, nah, dude, I'm an electrician by trade. Nah, dude, I'm a health and fitness coach by trade. Like, it is going to take me a lot of time and practice and effort to get to that, as Randy Savage say, the cream of the crop, brother. So like, but with social media, and it's particularly what we do, because it's so heavily marketed on social media, I feel like so many people see so many individuals supposedly doing this stuff so well, which may or may not be true. And then the comparison game gets in, and that it can be so demotivating, especially like, say you are making good progress. Say you went on the trip and normally you come back and you're 15 pounds up, but you went on this trip and you came back 7 pounds up. That's fucking half. Do you realize how good progress that is for how you managed that trip? Like, are you quite where you want to be yet? Maybe not, but have you made a hell of a lot of progress and come a long way with how you're managing that? Hell yeah. And I think for a lot of people, this comes down to how hard the change is. And like, this is your resource adaptability, right? Or your resource availability even. If something is going to be very, very hard, it is going to take a ton of resource. So if my kids are going crazy, if I'm moving, like I don't have a ton of resource. I need to change my mindset about what my expectations are going to be realistic for what can I manage. Oh, they're going to have an 8-hour lacrosse game. Well, I don't have the resources to manage getting a bunch of food prepped up and taking my meals and doing all this stuff. But maybe I do have the resources to manage getting some meal prep company meals to take with me. Maybe I do have the resources to manage, hey, I'm going to Uber Eats something that I know is very calorie friendly, like a Chipotle bowl or maybe something like that, that I know isn't going to be overbearing. And now I'm not going to eat 4 glizzies at the game. You know, like what can I manage realistically to get me closer to the goal, not necessarily like, oh, I can't hit the goal, so fuck it, I'm just going to do whatever.
Yeah. And us as coaches, like, I mean, I can speak for you guys because you're good coaches. Like,
Don't you
we are
dare put
open,
that on me.
we're open to that. I feel like clients sometimes, if we give a certain protocol, but we don't know that you have an 8-hour day. So like going back to what Danica said, like, tell me these things, tell me your hurdles, tell me your struggles, tell me where you're concerned. Because if you check in and you're like, you know, you don't say anything about the week coming up, but you have 2 8-hour days at the game or whatever, and you don't know how to navigate it, and we give you a protocol like, okay, hold everything the same, blah, blah, blah. Now you're probably going to be really stressed about hitting your numbers or whatever, or your plan. And like, we're open to that. Like, we are open and willing to work with you to find something that is realistic and that's going to help you adhere better than you would have if you didn't have us. Like,
And I would say be specific. Like when you tell us, be specific. Don't be like, hey, I have this 8-hour day and I'm worried about it. Be like, hey, I have this 8-hour day and I know I'm not going to have time to do XYZ to prepare myself. And I'm like, I don't know how to manage this specific thing. Because like if you leave it wide open, that's a much harder thing for me to hit the target on.
And then I'm messaging my clients multiple times a day and being like, can you tell me more about this? Well, what do you mean here? Well, do you have access to a fridge? Okay, well, can you Instacart? Oh, well, like those kind of things. And then it ends up going for like a few days of us trying to navigate, honestly, a very simple situation. So yeah, exactly. Like being specific, because like we're open to that. We want you to feel successful. We want to see you succeed. And sometimes succeeding is coming back from the trip and only putting on 7 pounds instead of 15, right? It's, and a lot of times, like example, if I have clients going on vacation, usually I'm like, and we're in a fat loss phase, I'll be like, hey, diet break, our expectation should be to maintain or like come back a few pounds up, like, or whatever it is, right? So I think people also just need to understand that if you have a good, understanding, caring coach who cares about your longevity and health, like long term, they're going to be extremely open to different modalities of how to hit your plan. I'm always going to talk to my clients about, hey, this is what I'm giving you. And if they're like, oh, I don't know if that's going to work for me because of XYZ. Okay, let's try this. Or would this work? You have to understand that maybe having a free day isn't going to coincide with a fat loss phase, but maybe we're just not ready in a fat loss phase. Like maybe we just don't want to be in a fat loss phase. Maybe we're just bringing more awareness to our food choices overall, right? So it's kind of, you just also have to understand that there's so many ways to skin a cat. I hate that saying.
Yeah.
So.
And you have to be able to recognize that the habit change that we are encouraging has to be okay for you. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like this one box that you fit into, and this is the habit that we're going to focus on, this is how we're going to change it, and this is the habit that we're going to form. It may not work specifically for you, and a good coach is going to adapt and pivot and understand who you are as an individual and your lifestyle and your strengths and the things that you're working on. I feel in saying that, there are a lot of clients that I have experienced where they're like, oh, the reason why I'm afraid to start again or start with a coach and to make these changes is because it was so limited. Like I was told to only do this or only eat this or only do this. And that's their perception, and how social media can be too, of how change is created. Change is only created through such regiment and structure, and that's just not the case, like at all. And you will know if you're very open with your coach and how they receive the information and that dialogue that you have. I love my coaches, and all of my coaches have taught me something. But there was once a time that I was just had Jada, was by myself in Alabama. So 2 kiddos, no family, no gym membership. I had resistance bands, and I was like, I think I'm going to prep for a show. Moved during all of this, and I was like yelled at because I wasn't able to like follow. I would say like, hey, the nap time is like I can't do 2 hours of cardio because it's I don't know how to like adjust things. And it was get it done.
How dare you?
How dare I have a life? Yeah, and get it done, make it work, get it done. Obviously
tough.
I'm smart enough to understand that probably isn't the best way to handle things, but you should know as a client too, when you're like, that feels a little in my belly. Like, I don't know about that. And I want to be able to like present challenges to my coach, because I hope that my coach teaches me how to handle these challenges of life. Like that's part of change, is going through and navigating. How do I navigate this, coach? Or, give me some tools that you have in your own experiences. And it makes the change a little bit more exciting too, and not so daunting, that you are like, oh yeah, I can go through these change and navigate change very well because I'm well supported. That was another thing that Adam talked about, like having support around you. I'm well supported and guided, and I don't feel alone in this process.
I think so. That's a great like way to kind of explain the idea of, all right, cool. Do we just have bands and stuff? All right, great. Do we want to prep and do that? All right, well, it's not going to be quote unquote optimal. Like we're going to have different
Right.
challenges. We might not have the same outcome because of some of the things that are working, that we have that are just truths of our situation. But that's what we have to work around. And this is this is what we have to work with. Here are our boundary lines, that kind of stuff. I think the hard part for most people comes back to this idea of they'll be in that kind of situation, a situation that will say, I hate the word optimal, but we'll say it's suboptimal, right? We just know that we're working against the grain. We're kind of pissing in the wind a little bit here to some degree, right? Maybe it's a slight breeze even. But like we know that things are just not set up for us to be primed to get the absolute most amount of success out of this. Okay, cool. Well, does that mean we can't have any success? No. But that's a conversation we have to now present ahead of time and say, okay, this is what I think we can expect. These are what I think are going to be reasonable or realistic goals and expectations for this. And that's what we have to work with. And if it's not working for us, then we pivot. Then we do something else. Then we figure out how we make things work in a different way until we're in a spot where we really are set up for success. Because for a lot of us, we get people working with us that are not set up to be in a place of success. Like everything that they have going on right now, they're like, I want to do fat loss. And you're like, dude, that is like, I love the idea of fat loss for you. I'm not against the idea of fat loss for you. But when we look at the reality of things, how do we realistically make that happen? And that's, so what we have to do before that is to set you up to be successful in it, not just try and, white knuckle ride our way in when we're moving and we're solo parenting for the time and having all these other things go on that are all huge stressors and taking away from your resources to do the things that you say you want to do.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
But like that goes back to that same kind of self-awareness of being like, okay, I'm looking at myself, I'm looking at my situation. Maybe I have a very aggressive history of dieting. Maybe I like really love doing cardio and I'm doing hours a day I run for an hour and a half every single morning. and, you know, this, that, and that, but I want to lose body fat. Taking that step back and looking at your situation, being like, well, what could I possibly do? And then recognizing, well, does that seem like a healthy approach? Does that seem like something that's even realistic for me to do? Do I have the hours in the day available for that? Wow. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle with the getting started.
And
It's
being very honest with yourself, right? Like
yeah,
being brutally honest with yourself and saying, am I even ready for that? Like, what does this entail? Am I ready to commit? And like, do I want to make back to like the question of like, if you want change, that's great, but do you want to change? Can you even make those changes? Like, are those changes even available to you?
right. And then what is that like? How difficult are we going to make that? It's like
Mhm.
some people take the approach of that rough grit sandpaper and they're just going at it. But could we use a finer grain sandpaper and make things a little smoother? Could we make it more realistic? So maybe sure, it will take longer to get things where we want them, but the amount of challenge presented during that process is so much more reasonable. Because we didn't touch on that one. We really probably should do a second one of these. But one of the other big points of how do we keep habit change is how do we make it as manageable as possible? How do we minimize the negatives, right? And maximize the positives out of it. It's like, oh, well, I want to lose X amount of weight. Okay, well, if we lose a pound a week and you're not hungry and you feel really good and your energy's great and everything in life is awesome, could we do that? Or do we have to try and be so aggressive where you're trying to lose 3 pounds a week and everything sucks? Which one actually sets us up for the long term or even maybe even the short term success? And I
Right.
think that's a hard question for most people to be honest about.
That is really hard. And also, I would say another thing that we could talk about at another time is how nowadays I feel like there's this instant gratification or like this instant result, and being realistic about things too, that habit change takes time, like just habits alone. So being able to recognize that the change that you're desiring may not happen within a week. And you may have those, just like you said, Stephen, even though you have worked to adjust certain like habits that you had or emotions that came up, it's still, you've done a great job progressing, but it still trickles in. It's an everyday, like I have to work on this every day and encourage that process of change. It's not just I want change doesn't happen like that. It's a work towards the progress every single day, continuous.
I love a part 2 idea because there's so much that I can expand on that.
Yeah.
That's a really good idea because we're already at an hour.
Yeah, you guys let us know. Comment, like, subscribe. I don't know. What am I supposed to say here?
Well,
We'll either do it or we
this,
won't before they ever even hear this.
it's true. When this comes out, what I can do is I'll do like a question box on my social media and ask people what they want to know about behavior change or like what is really hard for them.
Yeah, because we haven't even really talked about like how to actually uphold the behavior change. We're just
No.
talking about how to like
Yeah.
get into it with a mindset that's going to benefit you through that and for that.
We've discussed the like contemplation preparation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have like brain hacks or mindset hacks to bring upon action, like that I would love to talk about, like 7 little brain hacks.
Fun.
Dig it.
Stay
All right, so
tuned, everyone, for part 2.
hopefully you all enjoyed this. Or maybe they hated it. Let us know. Either way, comment.
Let us
Ain't no
know.
such thing as bad interaction, folks. Spread
It's
your
true.
hate. Spread your
Even
love.
if you're like, fucked part 2, we'll be like, yeah.
All
Thank
right.
you
Well,
for your engagement.
thanks for listening, everybody. We'll look forward to talking at you again soon.